If you are here, you have taken an active role in bettering your life, no matter what stage of life you are in. The Banyan Treatment Center's podcast will discuss many topics like recovery, addiction, self-help, mental health, and so much more. It will provide you with tools to succeed, ideas for recovering, and how-tos on creating a better life. My name is Alyssa, and today's episode is all about maintaining a friendship with someone who is in recovery. Today on our panel, we have my dear friend Genesis Suarez, who has the experience of not only having multiple friends in recovery, but also was in a relationship with someone in recovery. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jen.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and how you relate to this topic?
Yeah, so I've actually had people in recovery almost my entire life. My very best friend, who I met in elementary school, really went through that process of her, high school. You think it's just a party phase and kind of like going into college. She went through recovery. She went through the program. She works in treatment now. So it's also how I met a lot of my friends that are also in recovery. So I have a mix of people that I was there with them before and after and now, and then really seeing people in that long-term recovery.
It is likely to agree that maintaining friendships can be hard at times, but have you experienced maintaining a friendship with someone in recovery? You may have felt a great deal of pressure trying to be the right kind of friend to them while they navigate their new life in recovery. Well, you are not alone. Difficulties may arise, and you might feel the pressure to not trigger a relapse at times. But like any other friendship, you being there for them is the most essential part of the process. Establishing a sober support system will be the bread and butter for this unique dynamic. Listen in as we discuss some helpful tips for maintaining a healthy relationship and friendship with someone in recovery. Okay, so talk to us a little bit more about how that process was with your friend Megan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, like I said, we went to elementary school, we went to high school together. There was a little bit of a break, but we really were super connected, like, through those formative years. Mm-hmm. We actually, when we graduated high school, we were going to college together. We would drive to school together. So at that time, I think, there was no experience really at that time with people in recovery or what that actually looked like, what the signs were. And you're not really taught that in school, right?
Right.
And so we're all young and we're all going out, we're all partying. So seeing that just felt like, oh, she's a party animal. She likes to go out. She likes to do all of this stuff. And she was also really good at kind of separating that life.
Okay.
Right? So some people are really good at it and some people kind of let their flag fly. But she was the one that was really good at, I know how to act around these people and I know how to act around these people. And at first, I really had no idea. And so then there was a little bit of a break between us. Friendships kind of like fall out for a little bit. So there was a couple years. But she kind of hit her, I don't know if it was a rock bottom, but she hit her wall where things were like catching up with her. And we just reconnected. And I saw her put in the work and she educated me about what it actually meant. Because like I said, I really didn't have any firsthand knowledge of anybody in recovery.
Right.
So she was really the one to kind of explain what the program was, what treatment was like, what detox was, what, jail was, all of this stuff. So I could really, truly understand. And because I knew her and I knew the person that she was, and she felt like there was no judgment, that's what I always tried to be, is like, this is a judgment-free zone. Like, I want you to be able to come to me, talk to me, and tell me what you're going through so that I can be there as much as I can. And she was really the one to do that.
Yeah. So when it came to, establishing that relationship again while she's newly sober, did you feel nervous or uncomfortable, or were you concerned about triggers at all?
Yeah. And especially in the very beginning, I think I'm a pretty protective friend. So I would see her like, if she was going into a certain situation. So when she was going through recovery, she was still a bartender. And so I would ask her, I'm like, is that, without being like, that's bad, that you shouldn't be doing that. But hey, like, should you be doing that? Is the right environment for you? Like, what do you think? And I think I was always a little bit on guard.
Yeah.
And if she ever did have an issue or she had, she was facing a problem, she would eventually come talk to me about it. And that's where I always said, like, I'm going to have a safe space. But I think I was always worried. I myself would try not to drink around her. I never got into any of like the other stuff, even recreationally, but, I would, hey, I'm not going to drink or blah, blah. And she was like, hey, listen, that's not a trigger for me. I don't want to do that. And she also got a point in her recovery that she was like, I don't want to go back there. I don't ever want to go back there. So you having a drink in front of me doesn't bother me. And so, but that had to be a conversation because I'm like, oh, I can't drink around her. I can't do that. Da, da, da.
Right.
And she was like, listen, it's going to be on a person by person basis. Some people do feel uncomfortable, especially if alcohol was their thing.
Yeah.
But she's like, it wasn't my thing. And you're okay with that. So even now with my friendships now, I just have that communication. And now I'm not even that big of a drinker anyway. So me not grabbing a drink is not a big deal. But like in my early 20s, it was very different than now being in like my, coming up to my mid 30s. But it's a conversation.
Yeah. No, I love that you bring that up because a lot of people automatically assume like, oh, well, I just have to change everything I do when I'm around these people because I don't want to trigger them. I don't want to trigger them. And as a person in recovery, like, yeah, maybe in the beginning, but like it can also be taken as offensive because you're treating them so different and like they don't want to be treated different. You have to start with that conversation. What are you comfortable with? What are you uncomfortable with? I'm here to support you either way.
Right.
Just like you're saying, that conversation is so important to setting those boundaries.
Yeah, and in a judgment-free zone.
Yes.
That's always been important. I remember it was in my 20s. I had a lifelong friend of mine that his was alcohol, and he actually went to this amazing treatment center in Texas. And I was with him through all of that as a friend. And when he got out, he actually, was trying to pursue a romantic relationship. And I remember saying, like, at that point in my life, I said, I have wine at my house. I have beer in my house. I have liquor in my house. Like, I like to come home and have a drink or have drink with dinner. And how would I know that I can trust you to not do that? And he was also very, very early on in recovery. And so, in my head, I think now looking back, I probably would have handled that a little bit different. The conversation, it shouldn't have been about like, I'm not going to be able to trust you to have that versus, hey, you're in recovery. I think you want to pursue something because I was there for you. I feel like now what I've learned from that whole situation is I would have gone back and it's like, hey, listen, you're new in your recovery. Like focus on that. I'm still going to be here for you.
Right.
But unfortunately, because I didn't want to enter in that relationship, he felt like, well, I can't be friends with you at all. And so that was really tough. So I think that's one thing that I wish I would have gone back and handled a little bit differently because it wasn't about my feelings at that point, about me feeling uncomfortable about having alcohol in the house. At that point, it should have been, focused on him.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just encouraging people too, if you have friends that are in early recovery and you see them trying to date and do things like that, it's always suggested that they probably wait a year to make sure that they're comfortable because anything you put before your recovery, you're going to lose your recovery.
Right.
So it's so important. That first year is so crucial to building new habits and creating new coping skills. It's like, what was your coping skill before?
Right.
Drugs and alcohol.
Right. Right. And a relationship is not what's going to keep you sober or save you. Firsthand experience with that is like, that's not what's going to, getting into, well, if I get a girlfriend or if I get a boyfriend right now, that's what's going to keep me sober. If that's your intention on going into it, then that's, I can't say that's 100% it's going to fail, but I would say more times than not, that's not the best idea.
Well, a lot of times people substitute their drug addiction for a relationship addiction.
Right.
It's very, very possible.
Yeah, and that puts pressure on both.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And especially being someone not in recovery, I would imagine it's a very uncomfortable feeling to have because you're not in the same mindset as them.
Right. Mm-hmm. And no matter all of my experience and all of my friends that have been through it, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't have it in my head that like I could have, that I can't have one glass of wine at dinner. Or if I see, if I'm prescribed something for pain, that I'll take it as prescribed and I take one. And if that, and I can put it away in my cabinet and I'll forget about it.
Right.
That's not in my head. So I'll never, ever be able to relate to that. Mm-hmm. And I'm never going to be able, and because I can't relate to that, I can't give any advice. And that's where, that's hard for some people to not give that advice that you think that you have the solution and you haven't been through it.
I know you've heard the term normie
Yeah.
to identify you.
Yes.
Do you normies find that offensive?
You know what? When I first heard it, I actually thought, I'm like, is that offensive to people in recovery? Because I'm like, so that means you're not normal? But then as I've like kind of, gone through, it's kind of more of a joke of like,
Yeah.
no, we're not normal and we'll never be normal. But that's okay. And so, no, I actually find it funny and started using it in my regular vocabulary. I was like, I'm like the normie in my group. And they're like, what? I'm like, well, there's like 3 of us in our group. And people are like, a normie? Like, who are you? I'm like, I'm just using the slang now. So no, I think when I first heard it, like I said, I thought it was more offensive to the people in recovery versus me. I'm like, they are normal. We're just regular people. And they're like, that's not what normal means. But all right, Jen, sit down.
Well, I appreciate that you have that take on that for sure. But at the end of the day, nobody's actually normal in the world. Everybody's a little bit insane. Okay. That's
Some
why
more
we
than
call
others.
it normie,
Hello.
not normal.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So what are some other boundaries that you would suggest to someone, trying to keep a friendship in good standing in early recovery? Do you have any tips, suggestions for people?
I think number one, a judgment-free zone, right? Allow that person to be able to come talk to you and have a safe space to talk to you so that when they're early in recovery and they do have a relapse or a slip up or a thinking about it, being able to just kind of be a safe space to be like, hey, this happened. And then, make sure, hey, are you going to the right people? Are you going to your sponsor? Are you going to your meetings? But they have to do that. But it's good to be a safe space. I think everybody kind of wants that feeling of, I have somebody that I can talk to. Boundaries, I mean, if you're not in recovery, you can't be that person's, sponsor or sponsor-like person. You can't try to control, I think I learned, especially not so much in a friendship, but probably more in a relationship, because it's a very different dynamic, right? Like I knew how to support Megan and my other friends, like from a distance. But then when I went into a relationship, I felt like I needed to kind of control it a little bit more.
Yeah.
It was really weird. But I'm like, okay, well, if I pick him up and I take him to his meetings and I ask about his meetings and I do all of this, like trying to be like, look, I'm engaged and I'm supportive. That can not go over so well. And, just because you drop them off there doesn't mean they go to it or whatever that is. So that boundary of like, this is your world. You have to do what you need to do to take care of it.
Right.
And everybody's recovery looks different. That's another huge thing that I also learned. And it's a part of a boundary is, some people work the program for 80 years and they go to meetings twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever they need. And that's how they stay sober. And I have friends who haven't hit a meeting in a while, but they do other things to work on themselves. And
Right.
they're always actively working it. It just looks very different.
Right.
So knowing that you can't tell the person, well, you need to do this, this, and this. They have to figure out what works best for them.
No, that makes total sense. It's because, especially when you're in a relationship with someone, an intimate relationship, right? Like you want to support them. You want to be there for them. Like you said, you want to be engaged. But you have to be aware, like you said, there's no perfect recipe for recovery.
Right.
So even if you're like, okay, well, the suggestion is to go to 90 meetings in 90 days, and I'm going to make sure that you go there because if you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to stay sober forever, and we're going to have the perfect relationship.
Right.
And that's just not it. That's why they're called suggestions. You
Right.
know? People can do all of these things. And at the end of the day, like if they're not ready and able to make the changes on the inside,
Right.
it's not going to go anywhere.
No. And, also another huge boundary is taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Whether you're, a friendship, a relationship, a family member, you have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself because it can be daunting to try to like be everything for that person.
Yeah.
There's,
carrying all that weight.
yeah, it's a lot of weight to carry. But there's Al-Anon, there's groups you can reach out to. Like there's Facebook groups, there's support groups. I've discovered so many things that when I was going through that, that there's resources for those people on the other side as well.
Yeah.
And so part of that boundary is also get surrounded. It's going to take a little bit. Not every group is welcoming and not every group is perfect, but you find those people that can kind of rally around you and help you. And so when they do slip up, are you running over there right away? Maybe not. It depends on the person, but you kind of also have to figure out what's best for you.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't let it take everything from you, because you need to be able to be your own person too.
Right. And I mean, in my situation, one of the first times that my boyfriend at the time relapsed, I was running over there and I was making sure his friends are there and I was taking care of it and where are we going to go? And especially talking to somebody in that state, it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
And I wasn't equipped to do that.
Yeah.
I wasn't. And so, the last time it was like, all right, I'm going to set my boundary and I'm still going to be in communication with you. I still love you, but you need to do what you need to do. Mm-hmm. And I can't do that for you. And so, you have to figure out what works best for you. And sometimes that's, I'm going to take a step back.
And it's hard. It's not easy.
Oh, it's not easy, but I had an amazing group of friends, both in recovery and sober, that were able to kind of just rally around and say, what do you want? And we're going to make sure that happens for you. Yeah. And so that's really important for anybody who's dealing with any of that, is have that support group, because they have that support group.
Yeah.
Who knows what they're going through? You have to have that support group too.
Isn't it so amazing too? Obviously, it was like not great circumstances, but you've been able to witness firsthand the beauty of relationships in recovery.
Yeah.
And how much we're there for each other. And, because it's a life or death situation.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I think also why I have maybe I have like rose-colored glasses on, but I'm very lucky in the people that I have witnessed go through recovery are so successful and having such beautiful lives and marriages and children and careers, even working in recovery, out of recovery. I've seen what living a sober life can do for somebody. And I have such admiration and respect for everyone that has done that. That maybe, sometimes I can have, like I said, rose-colored glasses on because I'm like, no, you can do it.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm a little too positive sometimes, but it's true. Like, you can do it.
Yeah.
Just get surrounded by people that want to help you do that. And don't get, if there's any kind of wavering people in your life, just cut that out.
Yeah.
Cut that out and get the people that are gonna support you.
Yeah, absolutely. In recovery or not, if you have fickle friends, as you get older, they're going to diminish anyway. Hold on to the good, strong relationships. Hold on to the people that are there for you and you're there for them.
Right.
Because it's priceless.
It's a beautiful thing. I was actually on the phone with Megan on my way here, and the conversations that we have are so deep because we can say like, hey, what is your actual feeling about this?
Yeah.
Let's actually break into the nitty gritty. Like, not like, oh yeah, everything is great. You can have those really deep, meaningful conversations. And it's because she's done work, I've done work.
Yep.
And there's nothing more beautiful than that.
Yeah, absolutely. I make the joke all the time. Like, you meet people that aren't in recovery and you're like, they could really benefit from working a program.
I've learned a lot. I have learned so much from, people working the program and just like talking to me about it. And I was like, oh, I think I can like apply that.
Yeah.
In different parts of my life.
It's good that you're doing that because it really is life-changing. That's how we survive this addiction.
Yeah.
We have to change literally everything about ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's not easy if anybody's tried to change something about themselves.
And pretty quickly. This isn't like, oh, I have a year to work on myself. It's like, no, you have 24 hours. Like, you have to do this right now.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's never done.
Yep.
You have to still work on this forever. I'm like, oh man, that sounds daunting.
So I know we kind of just talked about it a little bit, but do you feel like your relationship transformed once, for example, Megan was in recovery?
Oh yeah. But I didn't see any negative turn. It was all positive just because she looked healthier.
Yeah.
She felt healthier. She was happy. There wasn't this pressure to live a double life.
Yeah.
There was this just like sense of weight almost that was kind of like relief. Like, okay, everybody knows now.
Yeah.
I can't hide this anymore. And it's all out there and I'm going to move forward. And so to see that kind of light come back to her, I think that was all very positive. I think maybe the only hard thing was to kind of hear the real stories of like times that I was there or times that I was involved.
Things you didn't know.
And I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit hard to kind of like, well, if something would have happened, how could that have affected me?
Yeah.
Right? You and me. And so I think that was like, at first I was like, oh, okay. But then seeing her really, like, I couldn't harp on that, right? Like, I'm not, look what you did 6 months ago. I'm never talking to you again. It was more like, look at you kind of changing your life, and seeing her just be healthier was a beautiful thing to see.
And I would imagine that now that she's been in recovery for as long as she has, like, your relationship is the deepest that it's ever been, the strongest that it's ever been. And
there's no service level stuff with us now. Like, if somebody has a problem, we're going to talk about it. If there's an issue that I'm having with somebody else, I'll call her and be like, this could be just me, or it's this person. And she'll call me out. She'll be like, no, it's you. It's also given her a level of honesty that is sometimes you don't want to hear, but it's very refreshing. And sometimes you need it.
What would you say to someone, maybe as a suggestion, if they suspect that their friend has relapsed?
I think that you talk to them. Hey, I know this is happening. It's going to go one of two ways. If you know for sure it's happening, it's going to go one of two ways. It's going to be, yes, I need help, or you're insane, leave me alone, get out of my house. Right?
The denial.
So there's going to be the denial. And both are, I mean, there's a sense of like, okay, great, they're acknowledging on this side, but they're still hurt because they did it. And there's a lot of hurt on the other side of them, like denying it. There's nothing that you can do. But you can confront them. Like, is this happening? I just need to know. And if it's a yes, all right, so what are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You know, call, if they have friends in recovery, what I would do, called that support group and say, hey, you guys know what to do. I'm not equipped for this. You guys know what to do.
Exactly.
And let them handle that. Yeah. You can't try to take it over. You can't, you also, there's a fine line between, being mean, but, it could also be like setting a boundary. If them relapsing is not going to be good for you, then, hey, you know what? You need to get the help. I've called your friends or whatever. They're equipped to do that. I'm going to step back for a minute. Yeah. And that's, just be careful of trying to handle it all and make sure that they have the people, like the professionals, right? The pros, let them kind of figure it out. And if you have no idea, if it's your son, if it's your daughter, if it's your friend, your husband, whatever, talk to somebody and say, how do I approach this? And maybe somebody can go into that with you. Right. I think that's also a really important thing, is don't do it alone. Yeah. Always have that support system to guide you in the right direction.
Do you have anything else you want to add? How to support people in recovery from a friendship standpoint? Anything you feel like you missed or you want to talk about?
No, I think it's just reiterating, be a support, be judgment free, surround yourself with people that are going to help guide you in the right direction. Educate yourself, put yourself first, and set a boundary that feels comfortable for you, that you know that you can keep, and stick to that.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Remember that growth and recovery are possible, and it can all start today. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Banyan Treatment Centers, and make sure you're subscribing for notifications of new episodes. And please don't forget to leave us a review. If you or someone you know are struggling, call us today at 888-515-7706. Thanks for joining us today on the Banyan Podcast.